person. And I think just being off for so long, and kind of on my own schedule for a while, it's hard to get, I'm actually kind of grateful, even though our content has been shrunk a little bit as far as the amount of time we've had in class. I'm kind of grateful we only had half days all week. It was like, okay, kind of ease our way back into this. So, welcome. Let's see. I heard from a couple people that the video shut off yesterday, or my volume did, and I think I accidentally hit a button, so I apologize on that. Does anyone have any questions where you may have missed some information on, would it have been sociocultural on the hand? Did you get that one or not?
It cut out right after you said all the words.
Oh, okay. So, what I was talking about with that is, just a second, I don't think I'm really connected here. That's not recording. I'm sorry about that. There we go. I think we're good now. So, what I was saying about the hand and the sociocultural piece is you and I are impacted by pretty much how we were raised. If you've ever been to somebody's house and you leave there and you don't say it out loud, but in your head you're thinking, wow, they do things differently in their house than we do, than I was, than in my own home. What I'm saying with that example is this. Because they do things differently in their house, do you think that impacts their behaviors? Yes, it does. Just like your home impacts your behaviors and values. And so where we live and how we were raised and what we're exposed to definitely impacts our behaviors. So that's sociocultural. So it's different than behavioral, because behavioral is you can observe, but sociocultural, you are also, think of all the exposure you guys have had to the media over the years, all of us. Does that influence our behaviors and our actions? Yes. If we took that picture of John Belushi and we took Bluto out of there and we put a woman on that picture, and instead of the name Bluto, we changed it to Jessica, right? How would people react to that same scenario that you read about Bluto? Bluto, as a man at 27, is just trying to figure life out a little bit. He's often given some grace. I'm not saying everybody is saying he's the best guy ever. But boys will be boys, right, guys? And yet a girl, a woman who was 27, stuck in college with a 0.0 grade point average, going to toga parties, binge drinking every night, how is she viewed by society? Not nearly as favorable or forgiving. And that's because of how we were raised, right? That's the expectations that we have and our society has placed upon us as females versus males. So, an example I gave students yesterday, I said, let's just kind of wrap up the hand real quick. If I used mental health, did you hear me use this example? Or did it get cut out? Okay, so if I use mental health, and I was going to say sadness, depression. So I'm depressed. How would psychoanalytic explain depression? They'd explain it by something that happened a long time ago, right? I'm just kind of repressing some terrible memory. How would an actual cognitive therapist, the pointer finger, they'd say you are irrational with what you're thinking. You are depressed because you're lonely. Really, you have no friends. Nobody in this whole world likes you at all, right? You think irrationally. Behaviorist would say you are depressed because maybe you grew up watching your mother never get out of bed because she had depression, and that's what you've learned on how to cope with that. A humanist would say you're depressed because you don't have love or someone to love you unconditionally. A biological scientist, a neurologist would say maybe you're depressed because you have low levels of serotonin. Are you getting the gist of how it's so different? A social cultural person would say, maybe you're depressed because you're living in Kenosha, Wisconsin right now, and you are amongst some race riots, and it's really deeply rooted and it's bothering you deeply, right? So there's a vast difference in each of them. I think I just touched it. I don't want it. I got to stop touching myself. That sounds weird. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on unless you guys have any other clarifying questions about the hand. Okay, so that's learning target B. We're going to go on to learning target C today. Couple things I just want to mention as far as your vocab chart. Numbers 12 to 19, numbers 28 to 37 are all learning target D. I don't want you to fill it out right now, but if you could just maybe make yourself a little note on at least one of them, because I want to keep moving. Learning target D. Identify basic elements of an experiment. I'm skipping learning target C. Why am I skipping learning target C? How many questions are on the test? 1. Can you look that up and read that yourself? Yes, you can. So, learning target D. If I formulate that into a question, what are the basic elements of an experiment? So for number 28, number 12, you could just write that in right now. What are the basic elements of an experiment? And then pull an arrow down or quotation marks. You don't need to repeat yourself all the way to 19. Start again at 28 and then pull it down. Does that make sense to you? I just want to try to avoid you guys just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting the same thing. But I want you to be able to identify where it's coming from. So number 12, write down what are the basic elements of an experiment in that learning target. And then at number 20, and then put in an arrow. And then number 28, do the same thing. So that's our goal today, is to start that and get through that. But primarily, I really want to focus on the term operational definitions. That's what I want to focus on today. So that was your homework tonight. Or last night, excuse me. I'm going to ask you some questions about that. And then we're going to do a little something with those yearbooks. And then we're going to conclude. Hopefully we'll have some time to do a checking for understanding. Okay, if you open your packet to the purple sheet behind the hand, it's the next purple sheet. It was a formative assessment checking for understanding. We don't have time to go over that. I would like to give you the answers so that you can check it on your own if you just want to write the answers on the back side of that, so that you don't have to look at the answers right when you're doing it. Do you know what I mean? You can just write down the answers. This is not graded homework, but I'm telling you, if you can do these, this would be like a test question that you would see in our unit test. So if you can answer these and you're like, I got it, this is a good formative assessment of learning target B. So the answers are, number 1 is A, 2 is D, 3, F, 4, B, 5, I have to change Pepos, sorry about that, 5, C, 6, E. Any repeats? Anybody want me to repeat anything? Make yourself a note to just fill that, try to answer those before the exam. That'll be a good self-check for yourself. All right, so what I would like us to start with is everybody has a yearbook in front of you. And I'd like you to turn to page 163. Who doesn't have a yearbook? Jada? I got one. Looks like we have a couple of absent kiddos here today. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now on a scrap piece of paper or somewhere where you have a little blank spot on your handout is fine. I don't care if you're right on that, that's your own. I want you to do the following. I have a hypothesis that senior girls smile more than senior boys. Your job, the next few minutes, it shouldn't take you too long, count how many men from pages 163 to 173 are smiling, and then record that number. And then count how many women are smiling from pages 163 to 173. So have your data recorded somewhere that you can actually share it out with your group members. And don't talk to anybody right now until we're done. How are you, Madeline? Good, good. Oh, great. Anybody else have their parent letter they want to give it to me? No? Thank you, Madam. Did you see any familiar faces? No?
I smiled with Sandy with everything, but I think we
probably be in the junior, or, oh, yeah, he might be in the juniors. Madeline, are you finished? Almost. Jada, are you finished?
Yeah.
Good. Christian?
Yeah.
Yes. Beth, you're done? Randy? Gabe? What you guys are going to do now is you five, not you, Jackson, are going to tell Beth your numbers. She's going to write them down, and then you're going to add them up. You're going to go to this side, and you're going to tell Allison your numbers. Okay? And then Jackson's going to tell you his too. That's it. We need to wait. Yep. Try to go a little quicker if you guys don't mind in the back. We have to wait for all the data. Randy, did you finish? Yeah. Okay. Did you guys over here see anybody you knew? Yeah. Did you? It's kind of fun. Look at old yearbooks. I still have mine from high school years ago. I've never looked at them. I haven't looked at them in a really long time, but what do you got, Beth? What's your numbers? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Seth, did you finish?
Yes.
Did you tell her your numbers? Hi.
Next hour.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Allison's gone. So we're getting our final totals here, and I apologize, it took us a little bit longer. I'm going to have to shorten next period how many pages you actually count. I didn't know how long it was actually going to take you to count that many. Do you have your final totals, Allison? Okay. Okay. So when you received the numbers, Beth, did you get different numbers from every single person in your group? Did any of the numbers look exactly the same?
Yeah, for the women, we got 2 111s.
For the women, if you didn't hear her, 2 people said exactly the same. There's 5 people in their group. There's 5 people in your group. What do we have over here for our totals?
For male, we have 374.
Okay, 374.
And then for females, we have 514.
Okay, so, all right. So when we look at these numbers, guys, I'm a little confused. How many pages did you, oh, never mind, you totaled them. All right, so my question to you also, Allison, is did you have any similarities in numbers?
For the female, we have 3 people that got the same thing.
3 people got the same number. Males? And you had no males that had the same number. What's that tell us, guys? Why? You all looked at the exact same pictures. What do you think, Maria?
Some of the boys had like smiles that were almost hard to define between a straight face. It was almost like a smirk.
Okay,
So I had a hard time deciding whether I wanted it to be a smile or not.
okay.
So that's where my numbers came from.
That's perfect. Somebody over here, Randy.
Some people might have done it just teeth.
Just teeth smiles?
I didn't, but.
Oh, you mean when you're counting, you only would include just if they smiled to show teeth. So for the sake of what we're doing here, I'm going to pull this down for a second. So you're talking like this. And if I did this, you were saying people might not count that. Is anybody in that category where you would, okay? Kind of like what you were saying, Maria, that smirk. What do you think, Madeline?
People are going to choose what smiles are different because everyone defines a smile differently.
Okay. Allison?
I was going to say, yeah, like everyone has their own interpretation of what a smile is.
If I would have asked you that before we would have started this and you had no idea what we were doing, would you guys all have been able to say, yeah, I can tell if somebody's smiling? But yet, the irony is that both of you kind of said the same thing, that we all have our own interpretation of smiling, right? It is quite difficult when you are doing research and how important it is to get good data and to get consistent data. Would you consider this consistent data? It's a very small sample, mind you, right? And you guys didn't have a whole lot of time, but your task wasn't that hard either, right? But yet we have quite a varying degree of our numbers when we look at the board. What are we getting at? We're getting at operational definitions. Would it have helped if your group and your group over here together collaborated before you started counting and said, this is what we are going to count as a smile? Do you think we would have seen some consistency? And especially would have helped if as a class we would have defined that and said teeth only, or whatever we wanted to choose. Operational definitions is the key today. And it's clearly that important, because what happens if you don't operationally define? You get inconsistent data. You get numbers that are all over the board. If I have next period, which I'm going to have them do the same thing, would you predict, and I'm not going to ask you guys, but by 7th hour, these numbers are going to be different all day? I would too. A simple task like this. So let's take a look at this. The scientific method, which many of you you're so familiar with this, right? So theory and hypothesis, both on your particular vocab chart. When we think about a theory, you have a question, you've got an idea, all right? And then you have a prediction. You need to know your independent and dependent variables. So I needed to start with this so that we could actually talk about our operational definitions that I have starred over there. So the independent variable is the if, and the dependent variable is what is being measured, okay? It's the then. And then you have confounding variables, and the definition for confounding variables are any extraneous variables that you cannot control that could possibly impact this a research that you are doing, an experiment that you are doing. Like, here might be one confounding variable of just something we just did right there. Did anybody find yourself losing track of how many you were counting? Okay. Because maybe your mind was wandering or you were thinking about something else. Is that something I can control as an experimenter? Nope, right? But does it impact our results? Definitely. And as an experimenter, your job is to keep it as tight as possible, meaning keep the experiment under control as possible. So do not leave today without understanding operational definitions. You need to operationally define your dependent variable. Our dependent variable was smiling. We didn't operationally define it. If you don't operationally define it, you won't be able to acquire these 3-starred things. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a term on the FRQ last year. It comes up all the time, whether an essay or multiple choice. You have to know operational definitions. So it's a way to measure. It's a way to quantify. Same thing, right? Measure and quantify mean the exact same thing, but you can say it either way. But it's a way for you as a researcher to say, this is how I'm actually measuring this. And it allows the study to be replicated with some form of certainty that things are going to be the same. So if I wanted some consistency in these numbers, if I wanted it to be replicated all day, I might say to every class, make sure you only count smiles that have teeth. Now we've narrowed the pack, right, a little bit. So when we don't operationally define, you cannot do these things. Take a look at, or I'm just going to read to you an example from last night's homework, guys. You were supposed to go onto Canvas, and you were supposed to pick 3 of these and operationally define, and I specifically am interested in operationally defining the dependent variable. Memory improves with regular exercise. If I was going to formulate that into a hypothesis, I would say, if I exercise, then my memory improves.